Segment Arba, Nikud Dalet.
Ma ta'asena, ma tomar bilavavecha. Ma ta'asena, ma tomar bilavavecha.
In this segment, you'll practice your ability to express your opinion concerning what a particular group that you're acquainted with ought to do in the future. Under the heading For Groups, Choose One, you will find a cluster of groups proposed. Select one of these that you would like to imagine yourself in relationship with. Your relationship will have been one as a consultant. As the dialogue unfolds, it will assume that you have worked with your chosen group for the past year, and at the conclusion of this term of service, a friend comes to you and says, well, so you've worked with them for a year, now what do you think they ought to do? And that's the sort of speculation that you'll be engaged in concerning this group, the group of your choice. Let's look over the groups. First, there is Melachot, an association of 4 Melachot who hope to end hunger among the poor that are residing in their lands. Under them, we find a group of Neviot, a group of 7 Neviot, to be exact, whose oracles against the abuse of power are engendering increasing hostility from people who are ruling in their countries or regions. Or perhaps you'd prefer to associate with the third group as their imaginary consultant. Third group, Nashim, a particular sort of Nashim, in this case a collegiate sports team, with 6 Nashim bound for national playoffs. Notice that Nashim is the plural for Isha. Or finally, perhaps you'd like to associate with the group labeled Arim, a consortium of 5 Arim, to be exact, all of which are suffering an upturn in urban unemployment and crime. As you may recall, Arim is the plural of Ir. To get an idea of how this conversation can unfold, we'll run through one sample scenario, selecting Melachot as the target group that you would be serving as consultant of.
And now let's become comfortable with the expressions that we'll want to use for this particular exchange. Ma ta'asena. Let's just concentrate on that initial prompt question. Ma ta'asena. Please notice 2 things about the verb ta'asena. First, notice that it is in the 3rd feminine plural. This happens to be the target form that we want to become comfortable with throughout this activity. But think for a moment, why is it that this particular exchange requires the 3rd feminine plural? To answer that question, reflect a bit on the composition of the group which you are serving as imaginary consultant to. What sorts of persons comprise that group? Secondly, with ta'asena, notice how it's been translated. The translation is offered, what should they, feminine, do? What should they do? To this point, we've become comfortable understanding that yiktol represents the future indicative, which in this situation would read, what will they do? What will they certainly do? That sense of meaning. And now we want you to know that the yiktol is not restricted to future certainty. If an Israelite wanted to say, what should they do? The Israelites would appeal to the yiktol to send that message. If they wanted to say, what might they do? Potential. They would use the yiktol. So we want to add to our understanding of the yiktol that it can govern both future certain and also future uncertain or future potential. Within future potential is obligation, as we see used here, what should they do, that's obligation. What are they obliged to do? Or what ought they do? And also possibility. What might they do? We're not using that tone here, but be aware that that is governed also by the yiktol. When we come to segment Chamesh Nikud Arba Nikud Aleph, we'll explore these flavors, or as they're known grammatically, these moods of the yiktol in greater detail. That takes care of the question Ma ta'asena. Now let's move on to the remainder of the prompt. Ma tomar bilevavecha, if addressing a man, or if addressing a woman, Ma tomari bilevavech. Ma tomar bilevavecha, or Ma tomari bilevavech. Notice the verbs tomar and tomari. These are second person, masculine and feminine respectively, singular, of the yiktol. We will introduce the second singular forms formally a little bit later, but since we need them for this dialogic exchange, please simply learn these two forms. Tomar means you will say, masculine singular. Tomari means you will say, feminine singular. The remainder of that question, bilevavecha, means in your heart. Incidentally, if that masculine form, bilevavecha, were not in pause, it would read bilevavecha, bilevavecha. Bilevavech is the feminine form. When we refer to these as masculine and feminine, we're just concentrating on the pronominal suffix that is adjusting, depending on who is the person you're talking to. The response will begin, Omar belibi, Omar belibi. Literally, I will say in my heart. Now, this expression, to say something in one's heart, is the Hebrew way of saying, I think, or I suppose. And so that's why you see both the question, Ma tomar bilevavecha, and the response, Omar belibi. You see these rendered as, what do you think? Or the statement, I think. And now let's turn our attention to the model, which will become then the basis for you to craft your own response. The inquiry we've already met. Ma ta'asena, ma tomar bilevavecha. And now you see a reply, assuming that you have chosen the melachot group. You will begin Omar belibi, and then follows what is your actual bit of advice. Titena et halechem lakatanim velo lagdolim. Titena et halechem lakatanim velo lagdolim. Notice that titena is our focal verb, third feminine plural. You'll be employing a third feminine plural verb as well from the yiktol in your composition.